At that moment, I was on the bus heading towards Kagami village. The mountains were covered in fresh greenery, and the blue sky spread out as far as the eye could see. We must have been on the road like that for about an hour and a half. Then, we arrived at Kagami village. I opened my day pack to look for my wallet, but there appeared to be some noise coming from up ahead. Seemed the driver and a woman were arguing over something. She wore a sleeveless white dress and held a white hat to her chest in both hands, while her restless eyes roamed all over the place. What's wrong? I asked, and the elderly driver turned to face me. I don't even know. This woman says she doesn't have any money now that we've reached the end of the line. I'm terribly sorry. She finally squeezed a faint voice out and stared at the ground. She looked like she was about to cry at any moment. I paid for her. The bus ticket from the city to here should only have been about 2,000 yen. I didn't have a lot of money either, but my parents gave me a little extra, just in case. I felt a little bad for this girl who looked to be about the same age as me, so I checked my wallet and said, "If you'd like, I can pay for you." She looked at me in surprise. But She got even more flustered. Perhaps unable to bear it any longer, the driver lightly shook his hand. All right, whatever. Just go. But make sure you pay on the way back." He smiled bitterly but spoke kindly. The woman thanked the driver and I over and over, and then got off the bus. I followed her out. There were rice fields and spare farmhouses as far as the eye could see, and right in the centre of all that was a rusted timetable and rotten wooden bench. The only thing that even hinted at the passing of time was the noisy cry of the cicadas coming down from the mountains. When I came back to my senses, that woman was looking at me. Her clean, neat clothes suited her well. I was a little nervous, as I'd never spoken to such a cute girl before in all my life. Talked to her. "Where are you going now?" The woman put on the hat she was holding and, after thinking it over, replied, "Where are we?" I wasn't expecting that answer and so was a little confused. This is This is She seemed to be making fun of me, so I decided to have a little fun as well. The quickest way to make friends with a woman was to make her laugh. "It appears you've come somewhere you really shouldn't have. You might not ever be able to return home now. When you are freed from your troubles, then perhaps you can go home." I made up a bunch of random crap. "Can I be freed from my troubles?" Seemed the woman was joining in on my farce. "Tell me everything, then surrender yourself to nature." I ran away from home. I don't know what I should do now. My mother is no doubt terribly angry. She sighed and looked down at the ground. "But no more buses are coming today." What are you going to do?" "I can lend you my phone, if you want to call home." She shook her head left to right. I can't do that. I'm scared. So you say, but you don't have anywhere to stay tonight, right? And you apparently don't have any money either. Tears started to fill her eyes. No, but what should I do? If I go home? Find out more. Why did you leave home? Well, you see... She hesitated for a moment, but then started talking. Her story went a little something like this. She was the only daughter from a famous family, known for several generations of flower arrangement. She had been trained in flowers since a young age. Her mother apparently wanted her daughter to succeed her, and decided everything that happened in her daughter's life. Finally, she had even decided on her betrothed as well. Unable to bear it, she could no longer put up with her mother's actions. Tomorrow, she would at long last meet the fiancé her mother chose for her, and unable to deal with it anymore, she ran away. At any rate, she couldn't return home, and she couldn't exactly sleep out in the open either. Well, why don't you accompany me to the inn I'm staying at? It's very cheap, so I can pay for at least one night for you. Her eyes went wide in surprise. No, you can't do that. I can't let a stranger. She started shaking her head again. But is there anything else you can do? It's not like I can just ignore you and leave a girl all alone out here either. She pondered the thought with a troubled look on her face, and then finally looked up. Is that really okay? It's fine. I was happy that I'd gained her trust. I'm Takahashi Naoki. What's your name? I said, and put my hand out. She blushed a little and shook it. I'm Neiko. Nice to meet you. We walked underneath the setting sun. I checked the inn once again. 1 night, 2 meals included, 2,500 yen. However, it was a considerable distance from the village, and apparently it was a rather old building. What should I call you? Reiko-san. If possible, that would be... She looked down at the ground. Well, how about Rei-chan? Either is fine. She smiled, looking a little embarrassed. We must have walked along the gentle sloping path for about 20 minutes. The sky had turned dark red. Naoki-san, why did you come to this village? To see you. To see you. You sure are funny, Naoki-san. I love traveling by myself. I always take trips even when I don't have a goal in mind. When I was in elementary school, I was even on TV for riding around Japan on my bicycle. The summer holidays and Golden Week are my seasons. I love to go as far into the countryside as I can get, and so I've ended up here. That's amazing that you can travel all by yourself. Rei-chan seemed deeply impressed. I'm glad you think so. I got a little carried away with what I said, but I felt a little guilty. But really, that wasn't the real reason. How long ago was it now? This village was introduced on some television program. It charmed me and drew me in. But why it did so, I didn't know at the time. I'd love to go there someday. When I explained this to my parents, they didn't understand me. They told me that if I wanted to go so badly, then I had to get a certain result on my end of term tests. And so, here I was. But honestly, anywhere would have been okay. It wasn't that I wanted to go somewhere, but rather that I wanted to run away from something. But from what? I heard that voice of doubt deep inside me. A short while later, a tractor came down from the top of the mountain. We nodded in greeting and he smiled in return. "Well, what are you doing walking out here at this time? You should get back inside. There was a bear not too long ago that caused a big old fuss, you know," he said in a loud voice. Nei-chan took her hat off and answered, "We're heading towards the inn." I couldn't tell whether he heard her or not, but the villager looked at us suspiciously and then passed us with a roar of his engine. It was one straight road to the inn, but it was after 7 p.m. when we finally arrived. A 2-story wooden building stood beneath the purple sky. At a glance, the building looked desolate and empty, like it had been abandoned. The only thing I could make out were the letters for inn on the sign that was falling down. A faint light was on by the entrance and first floor, but the second floor was pitch black. Well, it's cheap, so what do you expect? I smiled bitterly towards Dei-chan. "No, it's fine." She smiled back. We walked through the inn's gate. When I opened the sliding door, an unexpectedly wide lobby spread out before us. It appeared most of the lights weren't turned on, so it was rather dark. "Excuse me, we'd like to stay the night." I waited a moment, but there was no response. I looked at Dei-chan, and she appeared anxious. "Excuse me." At that very moment, the building started to rumble alongside a massively loud noise. The impact was so big that I felt like I floated in the air for a moment. Things broke all around us, and the walls started to make a terrible sound. I instinctively dropped to the ground. An earthquake? Dei-chan was at a loss for words and clung to my arm. Her hands were shaking. Silence descended once more, and the night bugs outside started to cry. What on earth was that just now? I slowly looked around, but everything had fallen silent, like nothing had even happened. I felt Dei-chan's grip on my arm gradually getting tighter and tighter. "Dei-chan," I went to say, and then shut my mouth. There was a sound behind me. Something was banging on the glass sliding door that we entered through. What was that sound? It was behind us. Right behind us. It's coming from behind us. Hide in the inn. Nei-chan, let's look for a different way out. Okay. As I forced myself to remain calm, I took the torch out of my bag. I turned it on, and a dim light shone on the ceiling. Then I checked around us. The walls were rather dirty, and the hallway was full of holes. Numerous guest rooms lined the left and right of the hall. Guest rooms. Yeah! Nei-chan let out a short scream. I looked at her in surprise, and she was frozen, pointing to the room next to us. I quickly shone the light at what she was pointing at. There was a piece of paper on a rotting door. Takahashi Naoki-sama, Misaki Reiko-sama. I nervously approached it. There definitely was a piece of paper on the shabby old door, but it had our names on it. I went to grab the doorknob, wanting to know what was inside the room. But then Nei-chan grabbed my sleeve and shook her head. Hey, let's not. I feel like something terrible is going to happen. Her tiny hand trembled as she held onto my clothes. I was worried about Nei-chan. How insensitive of me. It took everything I had for me, a man, to push down my fears, so Nei-chan was no doubt terrified as well. I'm sorry for getting you wrapped up in all this. I removed my hand from the doorknob and gently gripped Nei-chan's trembling one. She was a little surprised, and then looked at me somewhat embarrassed. It's not your fault. I'm glad you were so kind to me. She looked at me seriously as she spoke. Let's get out of here, the both of us. Sure. Her hand no longer trembled. Then I felt that because Nei-chan was here with me, I was saved as well. I could rely on myself, and I could rely on others. It was nothing I'd ever experienced before. After walking for a bit, I noticed that Nei-chan seemed fidgety. What's wrong, Nei-chan? I feel like something has been watching us since earlier. I shone my torchlight around the area. I saw the expression on her face change. What was? Nei-chan slowly turned to look at me, her eyes wide and full of tears. I fought the rising fear within me and held the trembling Nei-chan tight. Her shaking hands gripped my arms. The two of us, on the verge of collapse, held each other up in our arms. Keeping our voices down, we left the area. A short while later, the hall ended in a dead end. I looked around and there was a door by the stairs leading to the second floor that said, Chrysanthemum Room. What should we do? Nei-chan asked, looking somewhat exhausted. Let's rest in that room for a moment. We decided to rest for a moment in the Chrysanthemum Room. I looked around and moonlight filtered brightly into the room. If there was a window, then maybe we could get out through it. Yet, those hopes were soon crushed. The window was boarded up, and the gaps were too small for a human to fit through. If we could just get those boards off. I tried with all my might, but the wood didn't even budge. I'm sorry. Looks like I'm not strong enough to get these off. I see. Nei-chan answered somewhat disappointedly. Well then, let's just take a small break here. I smiled whilst breathing heavily. Lei-chan and I sat down on the floor. She seemed somewhat tired, physically and mentally. I took the hat she was wearing and put it on my own head. "I'm Neiko, nice to meet you," I said, and lowered my head. At first, she looked at me in surprise, but then she seemed to remember and giggled. I grew embarrassed and laughed as well. Looked like I was able to help her relax somewhat. "Shall we get going then?" Lei-chan gave a small nod. "Yes, let's," she said. We stood up, left the room, and then went up the stairs in front of us, up to the second floor. We walked down the second floor hall for a bit, and then I saw what looked like another room. I prayed it would have an emergency ladder and opened the door. Unlike all the bright moonlight we'd seen thus far, this room was almost completely dark. I shone the torchlight inside the room. We ran from the room, almost falling out of it, and ran recklessly down the hall. I almost put my feet through the floor several times, but still I kept running. Next thing I knew, Lei-chan, who should have been running next to me, was gone. "Lei-chan! Lei-chan!" I turned around, panicked, and looked around. I looked closer and saw there was a large hole in the floor. Rushing back, I could see Lei-chan had fallen inside it. Seemed she'd somehow fallen through to the first floor. Perhaps she was unconscious, but either way, she wasn't moving. "Lei-chan!" I called out, but there was no response. For a moment I feared the worst, but looking closer, her chest was just barely rising and falling. "Jump into the hole." I went to jump into the hole so I could help her, but as I stood up, moonlight filtered into the building. Maybe there was a window, I thought, and looked around, spotting an open window with moonlight coming in. Then I saw what looked like a large box by the window. That was it! It had to be the emergency use ladder. Something dark whispered to me, "Let's run." It was the other me. But, come on, she's just a complete stranger after all. A complete stranger? Yeah, a complete stranger. Who cares what happens to her, right? You're wrong. Making up my mind, I turned back to the hole, and numerous childlike hands came crawling out of it. "Yeah! Naoki-san, help me!" Lei-chan's screams from the first floor echoed around me. Something seemed to cut off the end of her scream. Damn it! I dove straight into the hole. I fell to the ground as I shook off the countless hands. The landing went better than I thought. I checked my surroundings. Where Lei-chan should have been on the floor was just a strange clump of something. What is... It was a mountain of babies. In the gaps, I could barely see what looked like Lei-chan beneath them. They seemed to be crawling all over her, like they were fighting each other. "Lei-chan, I'm coming!" I started throwing the babies off her. And that's the last one. When I was done getting them all off, I pulled Lei-chan up. "Come on, Lei-chan! Lei-chan, wake up!" She slowly opened her eyes. At first, she didn't seem to understand what was going on, but then she clung to me when she saw my face. Naoki-san! I was so scared. I held her until she calmed down. In reality, I was probably the one who wanted to calm down. At any rate, we had to find a way out. I looked around the room, and in the back found some light peeking in. It appeared to be moonlight coming from somewhere. We might be able to get out that way. I pulled Dei-chan's hand, and we started walking towards the light. As we got closer, that light was coming in through a window. We picked up speed as we got closer to it. We stopped just a few steps from the window. I could feel the trembling of Dei-chan's heart coming through her hand. Give my baby back. For a moment, it sounded like someone spoke. Give my baby back. That voice was coming from someone near the window. I readied myself and took a step forward. The dim light coming through the window got stronger, and a figure appeared outside. A woman glared at me, her expression like that of an oni. Let's get out of here. Yeah. I turned around and saw stairs leading to the second floor just ahead of us. I pulled Dei-chan behind me and started towards the stairs. Click. Give my baby back. The babies I had thrown off before crawled around at our feet, impeding our way. Stepping around them, we somehow made it to the stairs, and when I checked behind us, that demon woman was standing right there. She only had an upper body and was held up with walking sticks. I panicked and ran up the stairs. Click, 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 click. The sound of the walking sticks followed behind us. We ran. I pulled Dei-chan's hand harder than I had to. I couldn't let her look back. Click, 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 click. The sound of the walking sticks followed closely behind. Ha, ha. Click, 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 click. Ha, ha. Click, click, click. Ha, ha, ha. My chest hurt so much, I feared my heart would burst. Dei-chan was rapidly reaching her limit as well. We leapt past the hole she fell down, and after proceeding a little down the hall, that box I saw earlier was there. It's the emergency ladder! Give my baby back! There was no time to drop the ladder. I picked up Dei-chan, and then jumped straight through the window. A loud explosion tore through the air behind us, and we landed hard in the garden. Pain ran throughout my entire body. I almost lost consciousness for a moment, but I managed to hold on. Where was Dei-chan? I looked around, and she was lying a short distance away. She looked to be okay. At that moment, 2 bright lights shone on us. What was it this time? I could hear a voice on the other side of the lights. Oh my! Are you two okay? The face that peeked out from behind the lights was the farmer we met earlier. I wasn't sure if there was an inn on this mountain, so I asked Grandma about it when I got home, and she said it disappeared when she was a kid, so I got worried and came here and saw you two falling. Whoa! You two are hurt badly. I'll take you back in my car, so just hold on. Dei-chan and I looked at each other with a smile, and, relieved, I passed out. After that, we were taken to a large hospital in town. Dei-chan broke her right leg and was bruised in numerous places, while I got out of it mostly unscathed. But I didn't know much more than that. By the time I woke up, she was already gone. When I asked one of the hospital staff about it, they said her mother came and picked her up. She no doubt got in a load of trouble as well. Naoki, are you okay? The hospital door opened and a noisy voice entered. It was my younger sister, Mayumi. We got a call from the hospital and I had no idea what was going on. Jeez. So, are you hurt? She tossed a bag with a change of clothes and some small personal items and then sat down. So apparently you were with a woman, huh? Hehehe, you sly dog. But Mum and Dad are pissed. She was as noisy as always. I zoned out as she spoke like a machine gun and thought about what was going to happen now. Unexpectedly, I wasn't hurt too badly, so I was able to leave the hospital 3 days later. How much time passed after that? Time passed so quickly, like it was moving around me and fast forward. Did that night really happen, or was it a dream? The only thing I had proving Nei-chan's existence was her hat. The hat and I were left behind by the passage of time, and I didn't even know what I was looking for anymore. And today, once again, her hat and I are wandering around town, just like I am on the inside as well. Naoki-san? Somewhere I can hear her voice. Naoki-san? That voice echoes inside my head. Takahashi Naoki-san? I turned in the direction of the voice, and there stood a woman smiling at me. Won't you please give my hat back? I found what I was looking for all that time in her smile.